our starting places. What's the least amount required to produce the result that we're after? And if that amount doesn't produce the result, it makes a very clear logical path of where to go next, right? Because if you start with one, there's only one place to go if it isn't working, and that's to go up to another set. But if you start with 12 sets or 20 sets and it isn't working, where do you go? Do you go down or up? And how many? There's no way to know. It makes it much harder to measure and to track and to learn from over time. So if we start with the least amount required, if it isn't working, we can move up. And again, this is based on years of research and application.
We are about to launch.
Solo round. Truth, not trends.
Truth, not trends.
All right, here we go.
It's AM radio.
Here we are, Sunday, monster trucks at the Coliseum. How you doing, everybody? It's Jesse Schmidt
And Liam Bauer. Power.
Coming to you from the TNT Strength Studio in Oakland, California.
That's right. We're here. We gave up the basement a while ago. We said we missed it. It's true. There's no coconut oil in the big container anywhere nearby.
We still get some nostalgia.
I still have the 5
Pleasure
gallons.
out of
I actually have
those
the 5
memories.
gallons of coconut oil still. I could bring it and we could just leave it just for nostalgia.
There
And
you
so
go.
we could scoop every
We
now
put
and then.
ice in it. We could do like ice coconut baths.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just slather it. There you
Good
go.
for your skin.
It is good.
And then we can go tan
we can do
afterwards.
Oil pulling.
Mm.
Our teeth will be healthy, in theory.
This is the podcast where we help you maximize your strength as safely
And efficiently.
as possible. We sometimes go on tangents, as you can tell, but we always come back to the main thread, and that's because I'm sitting next to my partner Liam, who's been a strength coach for how long?
35 years and counting.
Holy cannoli!
That's right. I think last time I went into all the like months, seconds, days. Yeah, I can't remember all that stuff, but it's in there. Go back and
It
listen to
was
that episode.
millions of seconds.
Yeah, million. Well, I think it was billions.
Billions
wasn't
of seconds.
it? Yeah, I think it was
Wow.
billion.
And myself, I'm Jesse Schmidt, and I've been a strength coach for 1,981 days.
We're just so close to that.
About to climb over
2,000.
2,000
Yeah,
real
man.
soon. And today, folks, we're going to talk with you about strength training for runners. We've been meeting a lot of them these days over here in Oakland, and we want to make sure that you got some good info about how to complement your running with some well-planned strength training. So we're
Right.
going to talk all about it today.
And that compliment is not by leaving it out.
It is not by leaving it out; it's by leaving it in.
That's right.
And
Embrace
working
it.
hard and recovering. And shout out to the Donut Runners and LMJS. Before we get into that, though, we're going to talk with you about a couple of our podcast sponsors. The first one being Local Foods Cali. And man, if you're out there running, you're really going to want to make sure you are fueling correctly. You know, we always recommend 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So if I weigh 150 pounds, I try to eat 150 grams of protein a day.
Assuming that 150 pounds is ideal.
For me personally,
There
it's
we
about 170, so I go a little higher.
Yeah.
170 grams a day. That's right. And you know what? If you're using Local to help you fuel, they're going to help feed your inner athlete. That's their slogan, and they are not messing around. They do meal delivery, and it's pre-made stuff. You can pick from some of their pre-created meals, or you can customize them yourself. You can customize the macros. You can customize the ingredients. They're going to cook it all up for you and either deliver it to your home or deliver it here to the TNT studio. You can grab it, and all you got to do is pop it in the microwave and enjoy.
That's right. And you know what you could do is you could pop into TNT, get a good strength training workout to complement your running. And we got a microwave right here. We'll warm it up. You got a post-workout meal.
Bam. And, you know, when you do that, make sure you use the TNT Strength 5 coupon code to get 5% off your order. Again, that's TNT Strength 5. What else we got for him, Liam?
Well, you're a strength trainer, you're a runner, you want to be able to do strength training safely and efficiently. What kind of tool could you use? If you're not coming in here to TNT, you're looking to build a home gym, you want something you can take with you when you travel, there is literally nothing better out there than the Harambe system. The Harambe system is a band-based strength training tool made right here in the USA, designed, created, built by our friend Khalid Bourbeya, aka Boo Robbie. He is the man. Check him out. We had him back in one of our interviews. What episode was that? Shit, I can't remember. I think it was like 109.
We'll find it. We'll find it.
We'll tell you in a moment. But this thing is the best. It is made out of stainless steel. This bar has got a hefty, nice, strong feel to it. It's got a platform that's made out of high molecular weight plastic, patented sling system that allows you to load these bands very easily and stack them. You can actually create resistance levels up to 1,000 pounds. It can basically do any free weight style exercise you can imagine with this Harambe system. You can do pushing, pulling, squatting, rows, single legs, both legs. You can do every kind of thing. We think it's episode 105, baby. Episode 105 with Khalid Bourbeya, and learn about his journey to building the Harambe, the best home strength training system around. You can get 15% off all swag in the Harambe system store just by entering the code TNT. Get it now. You won't regret it.
Now, folks, sit back, kick up your feet. You're probably in the car driving, so don't keep your foot on the pedal, but
or close by.
But just listen closely to this solo round from Liam and Jesse about strength training for runners. Okay, we're here.
We are live.
We're in the TNT studio.
We're always here. We never leave.
24/7.
We're like one of those radio stations, like the guys just going all night. Bring me some more coffee.
The open sign never flips to the other side.
That's what I like to hear.
And today we're talking about strength training for runners.
For runners.
Distance runners.
Yeah, specifically. Although every runner could benefit. Not surprisingly, most sprinters embrace strength training, ironically, right? But
yes, they do.
Most distance runners somehow feel like it's not really needed, especially recreational runners. But as a personal trainer, any trainers out there? Raise your hands.
Looking at you.
Any trainers?
Donut runners and LMJS.
But like, how many times as a personal trainer have you had those people come in and they go, yeah, I want to work out, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, tell me about what you do. And they're like, I just want to do like my upper body. And like, what do you do for your legs? Oh, I run.
I run. It's enough.
I run. Yeah.
It's enough.
That should take care of my legs. And I'm like, okay, would you do like 10,000 curls with a Coke can for your arms? Because that's about the same as running for your legs.
Well, we learned from Fred Hahn way back when we did our interview with him in episode 107 that, if you are coming from a place of just sitting on your butt on the couch and you don't do any exercise, if you start running, you will get slightly stronger.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
I mean, it's not
slightly stronger.
Hopefully, as long as you don't hurt yourself.
But our goal is to optimize athletic performance and really tap into as much of our genetic potential as we possibly can. Then we've got to start giving our body an unaccustomed stimulus, and we've got to start giving it a load, and also the important condition of training to muscular fatigue, muscular failure in order to stimulate improvements in strength.
Right.
I think a lot of people, not just runners, but just people in general have no idea how powerful they can become through just some consistent, well-planned strength training.
Yeah, it's super basic. Not to go off on this tangent for too long, but I see these coaches on Instagram, diving deep into like the conjugate, periodization models, and like you need to do all. And I'm like, look, nobody needs to do that if they're just the average guy. If they just add strength training a couple of times a week, that's challenging. They're going to get so many benefits out of it. There's no need for complicated programming, people. And this is true for all these runners out there. I mean, two of the mantras at TNT, right, are get in shape to play your sport. Don't play your sport to get in shape, right? So runners all the time, they run, and I go, what do you do to, be stronger and everything? Oh, I just run more, or I run so many times a week or whatever, and that takes care of my running. Well, yeah, sort of. But the other thing we talk about is your muscles are both your engine and your shock absorbers, right? So that's one of the reasons why stronger muscles improve running economy. There's like literally no doubt about it, because you have both more powerful engine to deliver the force as you move down the road or up the hill or whatever, but you also have a more robust shock absorber system to absorb that force that you're putting into your system, right? Because when you go out for a 5 mile run or a 10 mile run, you're pounding on your body thousands of times.
That's right. Dr. Wayne Westcott, who you borrowed a blog post from August 30th, that's at tntstrength.com. Check it out if you're a runner. He points out that running is definitely a contact sport.
Yes.
It's not contact with other human beings necessarily, although,
Right.
maybe elbow a couple of them out of the way at the starting line
That's
or near
right.
the finish line,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're competitive. Just kidding. But you're definitely making tons of contact with the ground. So those forces are traveling upward, your ankles, your knees, your hips, your lower back, even some runners have like upper back issues, which is fascinating to me. You can just see that force traveling up the kinetic chain.
Exactly. And remember that if you weigh whatever you weigh, you're multiplying that by multiple factors, right? If you weigh 150 pounds, you're putting in, 1,500 pounds of force, whatever, into your system with each strike as your body pounds down into the pavement, right? So this is why, having the right shoes and what the surfaces are and all those things make a difference. But yes, it's extremely hard on your muscular system, your skeletal system, to do that repetitive pounding over and over and over again. The more mileage you do, the more you're putting that stress into the system. That's another reason why it's so common for recreational runners, but all runners, to just like accept injuries as part of their life, right? Like
Right.
they always come in and I go, do you have any injuries? And they're like, nope, I'm great. And then they go, every now and then my ankle does this, or every now and then my shin does that, my hip, my knee, right? Because they've just accepted that as part of their life.
Man. Also, my lower back is
Yeah.
constantly at a 7 out of 10 pain, but I've just learned to ignore it.
Exactly. I just take my daily ibuprofen or whatever, and put my ice pack on every single time I lie down.
Yeah, and I mean, so we're thinking of running as a sport, even if it's recreational, then we have to acknowledge that in sports there is the potential for injury. So that can happen, but we're not talking about chronic stuff here. We're talking about acute things, acute injuries, like you step off a curb wrong, or you almost get hit by a car and you have to dive out of the way and you tweak your wrist or so. That's a sports injury.
It sounds like an action
Well,
movie right
well,
now.
yeah, it does. Yeah, I gotta
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
die hard running. So, but if you are experiencing chronic pain, chronic discomfort outside of, obviously if you go run a marathon and you need to rest for a couple days and a couple things hurt, that makes sense. You just had a big competitive event, even if the only person you're competing with is yourself, impose a huge demand on your body, and you're really gonna, as the demands on your body increase, the recovery demands also increase. So that's something we always have to keep in perspective. So, but really, we think that if you are a runner and you incorporate a consistent, intelligent strength training program, you can make injuries, you can minimize them, make them a lot fewer and far between, and also just become a better, more powerful runner.
Yeah,
We're gonna talk about some of the reasons for that.
There's literally no doubt about it. But yeah, I think, as you said, that acceptance of that chronic pain is unfortunate. Like people just sort of, just not even realizing that they're walking around, like you said, like a 6 out of 10. Like that's become the norm for them. So they're just like, oh yeah, I'm good, because they don't remember what it is to be pain free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that you're dealing with that every single time when you're running around out there for fun. And again, no matter how competitive you are with it, but the more so it becomes actual competition, you like to go out and run 10Ks or 5Ks, or you're actually want to improve your own PRs, like Jesse said. If you're just competing against yourself or the stopwatch, as it were, you still need to take these things into mind. You can't just run and think it's just going to get better.
So I think a good place to start is talking about the difference between maximal strength and muscular endurance, because a lot of athletes in general, they have bought into this misconception that they need to do high reps for tone or high reps for endurance and low reps for power or strength.
Right.
And that's how you build big muscles versus the long, lean ones or something. There's a lot of weird ideas in there.
Yeah, those die hard. Those ideas.
Those are not evidence based. They're not science based. They are complete fabrications, just perpetuated by by people
Gym bros.
Gym broology. So, can you, as a runner, can you do, when you're doing a strength training, can you do high number of repetitions, and get stronger and build endurance? Absolutely. And just so we're all on the same page, I mean, what abundance of strength training scientific literature points to is that in general, we should be doing about 5 to 15 reps, and that lasts for somewhere between 30 and 90 seconds. And we need to be training to momentary muscular failure. So we need to have both of those conditions in order to consistently be getting stronger. So what does that mean? If you're a runner, that means that, you should be doing each exercise with good technique, right? So we're not throwing weights around. A good starting tempo is a 2-1-4. If we're doing a bicep curl, you curl it to the top for 2 seconds, hold it for 1 second at the top, and lower it for 4 seconds. And those are 4 real-time seconds. Sometimes we use a metronome in our studio to help people, hold that time, because strength training is inherently uncomfortable, especially when you get to the end of the set. You're going to feel like your muscles are burning. Your breath is going to be accelerated. Your heart rate's going to be accelerated. And you have what's called the alarm reaction, which is that you get this visceral feeling in your body that it feels, for some people, it feels like you need to run away from what you're doing, literally. and some people unconsciously try to run away while they're doing exercise,
squirming around and feet are wiggling and bouncing.
And so what we want to do is, right, we're using that 2-1-4 tempo. We're using a load that is going to cause us to not be able to lift that weight, curl that weight to the top anymore, somewhere, or in the 10 to 15 rep range. And that means that you're trying literally as hard as you can to curl that thing to the top, and you cannot finish the rep. You can't lift it. You reach concentric muscular fatigue. And when we get to that point, then we've stimulated a strength and muscle improvement. That's really the key. We can't just pick an arbitrary weight out there, that's light, that's easy, because it's just not going to be enough to stimulate anything new. Liam's had this joke for a while that people who use weights that are too light are just heating up the room, right? Because you're moving around, you're doing something, you're burning a couple calories, sure, but if you're not working hard and really as hard as you can, then you're just not going to cause a change in your body.
Yeah, and the other side of that is by doing this approach that we advocate, you don't need to do many sets. That's why it's so efficient, right? We're keeping our stuff very, very safe and efficient instead of doing, how many sets, how many reps, how long is this going to take? People start to worry about it, right? Because of all the usual gym broology out there. We can just keep it safe and efficient by doing one all-out set to that point of momentary fatigue.
So what about, can runners do heavier, shorter sets?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. What's the difference from a physiological standpoint when you're doing a longer set? So if I reach muscular failure at 5 reps versus 15 reps, is there a difference there? What's the difference?
The difference is not going to be dramatic, really. That's the sort of irony or sort of surprise, based on the idea that whatever set we do is ending at actual positive concentric failure, right? Like we're ending it because we couldn't do another perfect rep. The research is showing that, whether that is a lighter load and you can extend it for a longer period, you're out there towards that 90-second range or maybe even 2 minutes, right? Or it's a heavier load and you're reaching that momentary fatigue point in that 45-second range. You've really pulled all the available fibers in that time. So it's not really a dramatic difference, assuming that the last rep is truly the last rep, right? That's the difference. If people are just picking a load and stopping at an arbitrary number, it was kind of sort of heavy and I did 5 because that's what the program told me to do. or it was not quite as heavy and I did 15 because that's what the program told me to do. If you're just stopping at those arbitrary numbers, the likelihood of getting the best benefit from the time you're spending is getting much lower. So remember that intensity is based on the momentary effort, not percentage of your max, right? That's another problem. A lot of these coaches they call intensity, right? Like your 1 RM, which is how much weight you can lift one time. And then they say, oh, if you're lifting, a certain percentage of that. Turns out, again, when you take the time to implement that style of stuff, that it's just not a really viable system. It's too inconsistent, especially across broad populations. You can't say that if you have 100 athletes in front of you and I say, take your 1 RM and do 78% of it for X amount of reps, you're going to get 100 different responses because everybody's got all kinds of reasons to vary. Instead, if you just go, let's train as hard as we can and reach fatigue within this certain time frame, or just a rep range, right? But actually reach fatigue, then you're going to get a better response. And it's going to, again, vary across that population of 100, right? Not to get too confusing.
So let's come back to this idea of muscular endurance for a second, because I just think, for people who are coming in cold to this, when you tell them to train to muscular failure, it sounds like, oh, I'm training for a bodybuilding competition or something like that, right? So consider this. If I have 100 units of strength and I do a bicep curl with whatever, it doesn't matter how many pounds it is, but let's say I can do 10 reps. So each rep requires 10 units of strength. Okay. So I can do 10 reps with my 100 units of strength. Now I get on a strength training program and I double my strength, right? Which we see happen. You might not double your strength in a bicep curl, but we see it happen with the legs all the time. So, and you'll significantly improve your strength measurably in almost all exercises if you are consistent with it. So let's say my 100 units of strength, and also I'll say, if I have 100 units of strength and I lift a weight that requires all 100 units of strength one time, right? My maximal strength is 100 units and my endurance is 10 reps with 10 units of whatever I'm lifting. So now I double my strength and I have 200 units of strength, okay? My maximal strength is now 200 units, right? When my 1 rep max is an activity that requires 200 units of strength one time, okay? And now when I go back and try to bicep curl that same 10 unit weight, right? Now I can do 20 repetitions, okay? So the fundamental at play here is, and Arthur Jones was the first person that I'm aware of that pointed this out, that there is a direct relationship between maximal strength and muscular endurance. And this is so important to understand. This is why 5 reps trained into failure yields the same result as 15 reps trained into failure. Either way, my maximal strength is going to go up, and because there's a direct relationship between maximal strength and muscular endurance, my muscular endurance is also going to increase proportionally.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's specificity, right? If you're a power lifter or Olympic lifter, right? There's little edges of things that can be played with, techniques and stuff. But the basic concept is that relationship stays the same, right? Whether I train on the high end and work on improving my 10 RM, right, where the most weight I can move 10 times, or the lower end and I figure out how much weight I can move 5 times, right? If either end goes up, the opposite end goes up, right? If my 10 RM went up, my 5 RM will go up. If my 5 RM goes up, my 10 RM goes up, right? There's a relationship that exists in all of us all the time. And so that's what we're really talking about. You don't need to spend time at one specific range. What it turns out for most of these endurance athletes, right? We do feel like it's probably a good idea to stay at the higher end, right? You are looking to work at an extended period of time. So choosing weight loads that will cause you to fatigue near that higher end, that 90-second range, is probably a good choice for you. But as long as it's a maximal effort and that load and time that you can handle is moving up, you are reaping the benefits of it, right? So either way is fine. And if there's days where you feel like challenging yourself and lifting heavier and reaching fatigue sooner, that's great. And if there's times when you want to grind it out, and also this will be a personal preference thing too, right? Some people really prefer the sort of slightly longer stuff, and some people prefer the slightly shorter stuff. It's always best, I think, to kind of cycle around. And this is where, the quote unquote periodization thing comes in without having a complicated program, you can just consciously choose some days I'm going to work to fatigue with a slightly lighter load and know the sets are going to take longer. Some days I'm going to work with slightly heavier load and know the sets are not going to take as long. But my goal is always put a maximal effort in with the resistance that I'm using at the moment.
There you go. Just as a side note, I chatted with a researcher named Chris Beardsley in a webinar a couple months back, and he pointed out that there actually is less CNS fatigue built up with shorter sets. So meaning, 60 seconds or less. So that might be, 5 to 8 repetitions or something like that. So if you are doing those longer sets and you just find that you're, I don't know, feeling tired after your workouts or something like that, you should be fatigued, right? Because that's what we've temporarily weakened the muscles, and now we're going to have a positive stress response where we actually get stronger. If you just find that you're like mentally dragging and your diet's in check and you're getting good nights of sleep and you can't think of any other reason why, you might be dragging, then yeah, you could try some shorter sets.
The other thing is, again, depending on whether it's competition, we were just talking off air about one of our friends who's running, very extreme endurance events and is getting ready to run, the Grand Canyon run where they run from one rim to the other, down the bottom, across and up. And this person likes to engage in extreme endurance stuff and has just come off of a long race. As I was reminding them, like, hopefully you're going to be resting going into that. So if you're building up to a marathon or any race where you're trying to set a personal best, you have to trust that you've got the base that you need. And as that event is approaching, you should be training less and feeling prepared and resting those last few days. I know Jesse, when he's got races, he'll take days off leading up to that race, right? He's not going to go, I got to get 2 more hard runs and a good lift in before tomorrow when I'm going to go run my race.
Although those thoughts go through my head because I'm an athlete, and athletes, our biggest issue is resting enough.
Yeah. So
truly resting, not just doing an easy day.
So keep in mind that if your training is well constructed and then as the event nears, usually what happens is you will taper off, the volume, frequency, whatever of your stuff that you're doing, so that on the day of the actual event, you are well rested, and ready to give it your maximum effort.
Yeah. I usually, if I'm doing a race or a competition on a Saturday, the latest I will do a strength work, really any workout. I want at least 5 to 7 days of pure rest before a competition. I'm not doing anything except for walking. And so yeah, I'll do a workout on Sunday and then rest Monday through Friday, and then do the competition on Saturday. So that's what we tend to recommend for athletes in doing any type of competition.
Hey, what are those guys doing here?
Whenever I feel like I'm stalling out on my bench press, I know I need a new strength curve.
Whether you're stalling out on the road or stalling out in the gym, you need something with great engineering.
That's right.
So look for the pendulum. Pendulum.
Not just your average strength machines.
No, they have smooth strength curves.
Amazing rigidity.
And did we mention the engineering's fantastic?
That's right. Not to mention, they come in cool colors.
Like red.
And silver. Well, that was kind of weird. What was that all about? Back to the interview.
So let's get into what we recommend at TNT. Is the name for it is high intensity training, or one of the names for it, or we say we're HIIT based.
Hit influence.
Some of the fundamentals of high intensity training, or effort based training, sometimes we call it, is it's brief, intense, and infrequent. And again, those come from Arthur Jones, who was the founder of Nautilus way back in the 60s when Nautilus exploded and people realized there were more than just barbells they could be using to get stronger. Nautilus gave the world a variety of different tools, and maybe more user-friendly than a barbell for some people. But training briefly, intensely, and infrequently has a lot of benefits, especially when you contrast it with sort of like quote unquote standard, typical sort of gym training. So what would we call typical gym training? Well, what most people do, and when we meet with new clients at TNT, most people that are strength training say, yeah, I go to the gym and I do 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 12 reps. And I don't know, sometimes I work hard, but we find out generally in the course of our first meeting somebody that they're working out at probably like a 6 or a 7 or less. They're never getting to their true 10 out of 10.
Right.
So what we know right there off the bat is this person's spending a lot more time than they need to be doing their strength training. They're not working out intensely, probably not working out intensely enough to be stimulating new higher levels of strength and muscle on a regular basis. They're leaving gains on the table.
Yeah. Let's say, just as a quick side note on that, let's say you're a little bit of a nerd and you like to go out and read about this stuff, and you maybe you did your own little research and you tried to figure out what's the best number of sets to do or whatever. What happens is this becomes misinterpreted. I just had a little conversation, consultation conversation with a guy, and he's reading the research, and a lot of times research you'll see the current stuff saying 10 sets per muscle is like optimal. That's a pretty good place to start. 10 sets per muscle. What they don't often realize when those statements are made is that they mean 10 sets per muscle per week, not per workout. So this guy was doing, 8 sets of every muscle group every time he worked out, and he was working out at least 3 times a week. So now he's doing, 24 sets per muscle, which is, even from the most basic research, is like way too much, right? It's more than is required. And what we like to remind people is that we always start from, unlike most coaches or most people that approach this stuff, our starting place is what's the least amount required to produce the result that we're after. And if that amount doesn't produce the result, it makes a very clear logical path of where to go next, right? As Mike Menser used to say, he had no sort of emotional attachment to the idea that one set was enough, but it was the logical place to start, right? Because if you start with one, there's only one place to go if it isn't working, and that's to go up to another set. But if you start with 12 sets or 20 sets and it isn't working, where do you go? Do you go down or up? And how many, right? There's no way to know. It makes it much harder to measure and to track and to learn from over time. So if we start with the least amount required, if it isn't working, we can move up. But we found that most of the time, 2 workouts a week is enough for a huge amount of the population. It's very unusual for people to require more. And again, this is based on years of research and application.
And another thing we haven't mentioned yet too is that, right, when we strength train, we do require recovery. And so why we're such fans of operating using the minimum effective dose at TNT is because, let's say I do 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 12 reps, but I don't train to muscular failure. I did a bunch of work, right? My body has to recover from all that work, right? It required, right? I've used some of my body's ATP. I've used some of my body's glycogen. I might be sore afterwards, right? So it's going to take some time to recover from this effort. And I may or may not have stimulated new strength and muscle. Shouldn't I be if I'm going to recover from it, like why go through that effort and not get any reward from it? There's a for people, Eric Thomas fans out there, E.T. the hip hop preacher, he says, you're already suffering, get a reward from it, So we might as well train to fatigue. And what we find time and time again is that when you train to muscular failure in your very first set, that's all that needs to happen. And this is why this is so important, is because we want the minimal effective dose to produce a result so that we can take most of our time outside of the strength training to recover. Okay, so the longer your workouts are, the longer you're going to have to recover. So we want to shorten them, brief. We want to raise the intensity, intense, and then we also want to lengthen the rest periods, so infrequent. So that's why for runners and for other athletes and for people in general, we recommend that people generally do 2 full body workouts per week and try to work out using 1 single set per exercise to muscular failure, rest at least a couple days in between strength training bouts, and then do it again. And you should be tracking and making sure that you are getting stronger. And if you're not tracking, you can go by feel. If you're getting, a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight and you're sleeping full nights and staying hydrated and getting your electrolytes and you're doing all that stuff and you feel good, then things are probably headed in the right direction. And if all those things aren't in line, then you can tweak things.
And, hopefully, again, we talk a lot about keeping records, but hopefully as a runner, you're also tracking how
Your
you run,
runs.
right? Because how else do you know you're getting better? And with running, it's generally about time and distance, right? Where you hopefully have some set courses that you run. If you're competing at specific distances, 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever that happens to be, marathons, the guys that are successful and the guys that are having, a plan you better believe that they know what their best time is, on a specific course. Maybe you've run high-end marathons, the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, right? If you've ever run it, you probably know your time, whatever that time may be. And then if you're doing it again, you know what your time to beat is. Well, all your practice, all your training, you need to be paying attention to those elements as well, right? Otherwise, how are you benefiting from it, right? You don't just go out like, I just ran around the neighborhood and, it was fun. If that's all you want from it, that's great. But again, you'll get more success. A lot of times if you choose either a specific distance or a specific time, if you choose a specific time, you go, can I go further in that time? Or if you choose a specific distance, can I do that specific distance in less time, right? There's ways to see improvements, right? Simple ways.
And then let's say that you're just a recreational runner, right? And you actually don't care about getting better necessarily. Here's a way to measure whether your strength training is helping you out as a runner and as a human being. Do you hurt less? Do you have less injuries? Are your ankles and hips and lower back less painful, or has your pain gone away because you actually have recruited some new muscle fibers that are insulating your joints, that are protecting them as you run, and maybe even helping you recover. So those are some ways that you can look at whether the strength training is working for you.
Yeah, there's synergy too, right? With oxygen uptake and how the systems are using. Remember, running is essentially an aerobic event. The truth is that all systems are running in the background. Sometimes I use the hybrid car analogy, right? The hybrid car has the electric motor, which generally does the lower output activities, right? You turn the car on and you're just putting around the neighborhood. It's spending most of its time with that electric motor. But now you got to punch it up a hill and that gas motor kicks in, right? That's that. And so in this case, the electric motor is the aerobic system, and the aerobic system, right? The byproducts of that is just CO2 and water, right? You're just, there's no real stuff coming out. There's no real exhaust, major exhaust coming out. When you do anaerobic activity without oxygen, that's when all the fuel is getting burned, right? That's the gas engine producing that more waste, right? More byproducts. Those two engines in a hybrid car are running simultaneously, and one or the other contributes more based on the intensity of the output. It's true with our body as well, right? When we work harder, the anaerobic system is helping out. We work less intensely, the aerobic system is dominant, but you're not turning them on or off. But training should have that in mind as well. We want both systems to work and balance together to get the most out of our training. So hopefully when you're out there running, there are times when you're pushing the speed up, you're challenging your system. You may or may not have heard of fartlek training. It's a funny word. It means speed play. It was a type of basically structured improv interval training that was created many years ago as a way to improve cross-country runners' times and challenge them. And it actually had dramatic impact and results. If you don't know much about fartlek training, we got a great article about that on our blog as well. You can search it out on the TNT blog, learn about it, a little bit of the history, and look at perhaps implementing some sort of interval stuff, a little higher output into your overall running, again, instead of just always plodding along at a basic pace.
If you've already been running, because runners love to run, they love running, and running's a great community, as I've been finding out over the last, several months. The cool thing is when you come to the strength training, you already have that like great aerobic base. I remember doing a consultation with a guy a couple of years ago, and he was a young marathon runner, and he had never really lifted weights. He'd messed around a little bit, but he'd never been, challenged by a coach. And so, I put him through a brief workout, but it was funny because, when you do what we're recommending in this episode, which is, move slowly, train your muscles with good technique to muscular failure, you will, like I said earlier, your heart and your lungs are going to be working hard along with your muscles. And for most people, the general population, we say, when they go through this sort of workout, you might do 30 minutes of hard, 20, 30 minutes of hard strength training and walk out the door breathing hard, right? And you could be, right, you could have an elevated heart rate for 10, 15 minutes after your workout, that sort of thing. But this guy, I put it, and he's never done this before, right? I put him through a set. He does a chest press to failure, and he's breathing hard and all that. And he takes one deep breath, and it's like I can just see it, like his heart rate is like back down to like 40 beats per minute, like like immediately. It was incredible. So not saying necessarily, and I'm exaggerating here. I don't know what his heart rate was, but I could tell he would. I mean, just with one deep breath, he was recovered, which was incredible. So if you already have that aerobic base, then you could, do your workouts even more efficiently, right? I'm really saying that, if you're doing some concentrated, intelligent strength training, you could be knocking out, your strength training in 15, 20 minutes of workout, which is really gonna save energy for that recovery process, and it's going to give you all the benefits that you need to become a stronger, more resilient runner.
Yeah, because remember, not only does it improves the resilience of the connective tissue, right? Tendons, ligaments, bones, all that stuff is also benefiting from safe, challenging, effective strength training. Yeah, I've had a similar experience just as that, which is amazing when you're working with higher level athletes or people that have a good conditioning. I used to train short track speed skaters, and the top guys that I was training, I would put them through these brutal circuits. They call them complexes, where they do like, a heavy squat followed by some plyometrics, followed by some type of sprint, like little brief combinations of efforts that are maximal. And these guys' heart rate might be up, 180 beats a minute. And then same thing, that as soon as I would go, okay, done. Like Jesse said, they take a couple deep breaths, and their heart rate was back down to like 40 or 50 beats a minute within a moment. They'd just be like, okay, ready, let's go again. You know what I mean? And this is incredible, and it's unusual. The unfit person, the heart rate goes up fast and comes down slow. And the extremely fit person, the heart rate goes up slow and comes down fast. That's, sort of a sign of being very fit, right? So it's normal when people are, out of shape. We've experienced, you chase the bus, for instance, and then you catch it. You sit on the bus, and then you realize it took you like 10 minutes to catch your breath.
All right. Okay, we're gonna have to do a whole separate episode on nutrition for glycolytic sports like running.
Right.
But
the reality is, not to go off on that, but I mean, again, fat is the fuel of aerobic activity, not carbohydrates, right? So that's a whole other thing. That's a deep hole we could dig into with carb loading, and people thinking, that's a sort of a manifestation of modern stuff of like how to manipulate carbs to get better performance and so forth. And nobody or very few people really understand it. They think carbohydrate diet is beneficial for aerobic athletes. Well, the reality is, if you're just eating carbs all the time, you're not loading carbs by doing so. You're just eating carbs. The only way you can load carbs and cause your body to supercompensate is to unload carbs first. You have to deplete them in order to create the requirement for your body to want to load them. And so that's another thing people don't understand. And this is something that is true of many sports. There is a lot of carb manipulation. If you understand it, you can do amazing things.
So maybe we the last thing we get into here is just talking about some key exercises for runners to be doing.
Yeah. And remember, as Jesse mentioned early on, we have a whole article on the blog about this. This article is based on some research done by our good friend and mentor, Wayne Westcott. Wayne is the man. He is incredible. He's a rock star. We love him. Everyone in the fitness community, if you hang out with Wayne, it's like hanging out with like a movie star. You walk through Ursa with Wayne, and you can't go 10 feet without 100 people stopping to talk to him.
And he is such a rock star because he's a PhD exercise physiologist with over 4 decades of experience in the field doing research.
So this article was kindly donated by him to us. He's given me access to all of his catalog all the time, and I frequently dip into there and take advantage of that connection. So this article is, what's cool about it is, if you take the time to read it, which I recommend you do, it has a great research program that they were able to do with high school cross-country athletes, and they were able to work with the same group for 4 years. So they have really great amounts of data of the benefits of that this strength training program gives to these endurance athletes. And to have a set population that you can work with for such an extended period of time is a luxury. Most strength training research is often done for very short, and it's all often used as the argument against it. Well, it was only 12 weeks, it was only 6 weeks, it was only whatever. This is a 4-year study done with the same group. And so really able to show the benefits of that stuff. So it's definitely worth a good read.
Let's start with the broad strokes. Really any strength training program should have the big three in mind. You should be doing a compound push, a compound pull, and a compound leg movement. So compound push could be a push-up, a bench press, a chest press using a machine, anything that is involving the muscle groups, the pecs, the deltoids, and the triceps.
Yeah, what we associate as pushing muscles, right? Pushing things away from us, whether you're doing it horizontally, which is usually thought as the prime path, or vertically, right? Anytime you push things away, you're always engaging chest, shoulders, and triceps in some combination.
Right. So you could also do a shoulder press in there. That would be a compound pushing movement, not as much involvement of the pecs in a vertical pushing movement like that. A compound pull could be a chin up, a row, a barbell row, bent row, a lat pull down,
dumbbell rows, cable rows, resistance band rows, or recline pulls using your body weight.
Yeah. TRX row, right?
Yeah.
All of those things, even though they're using different tools, as long as you create enough resistance to bring your muscles to fatigue in that same zone that we talked about before, 30 to 90 seconds or 5 to 15 reps, then it'll work to help you build strength. And then the compound leg movement would be something like a squat or a leg press, could be a isolateral exercise like a lunge.
Yeah, it could be. And again, it can be a
wall sit,
plate loaded leg press, a 45-degree leg press, a selectorized leg press, a squat, a front squat, a back squat, even some kind of deadlift could be beneficial. Again, the tool is less important rather than, using good technique and working to challenging levels of fatigue. So, and again, the tool will also dictate sometimes the application. As Justin mentioned, if you're doing single leg stuff, it's probably because you don't have enough resistance to fatigue both legs together. Some people would argue that running is a one leg sport, right? You're alternating, but you're putting force into the ground one leg at a time. So they think it's important to do single leg stuff. That's okay. So you might be doing a lunge or a split squat, right? Even a body weight squat that's done effectively can be super challenging. A bottom down squat, starting from the top and lowering yourself down and back up. We have videos about that on Instagram. You can track them down, see that exercise in action.
And then some other kind of hot spots for runners. In our studio, we have the brand MedX, which stands for medical exercise. We have the MedX lumbar machine, which is a piece of equipment that trains the erector spinae muscles, those lower back muscles that support your spine. And this is a really incredible piece of equipment to use to train those lower back muscles and keep your lower back strong and resilient. If you don't have one of those available, some gyms do have a lower back machine. None of them are going to be as good as the MedX back machine, but they're definitely better than nothing.
Sure.
Liam mentioned the deadlift before. You also could do a good morning. I'm not a huge fan of good mornings because I think it's challenging to set them up safely.
Yeah, you can do seated good mornings. That can be effective. You can do some sort of RDL, a Romanian deadlift. Again, dumbbells, barbells, doesn't matter, even cables.
You also could do a superhero, just lying on your belly on the ground.
Absolutely.
You just lift your arms and legs in the air.
A lot of gyms have, the sort of the glute ham devices or the 45-degree.
So the reverse hyper.
The hyper extension they call it, but it's not really. But the 45-degree ones are really common. They started showing up everywhere because people thought they were safer. You can add resistance to that movement. You can use resistance bands, which is one of my favorite ways to do that movement. You can hold resistance. You can hold weight plates. You can hold barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, whatever, and add resistance to those motions. And if you do it as effectively, it can be really great. those do engage a little more hamstrings and glutes as well as the lumbar muscles, which is okay. Again, not as isolated or effective as the medics, as Jesse said, but not everybody can have access to that stuff, and that's okay. There are ways to do it.
And then we've got the lower extremities also. So doing some sort of calf raise is going to be really important. Coming back to something we talked about initially, is people think, oh, I run, my legs are strong, my calves are strong. Well, your calves might be sore all the time, but they're not necessarily. In fact, if you do run all the time, they're not getting stronger from the running. You have to impose a load that is heavy enough that you can only perform somewhere between 5 and 15 repetitions before you reach muscular failure. And you have to make sure that those weights get progressively heavier in order to be stimulating new strength and muscle.
Yeah, for many people, the most effective place to start is literally just a single leg calf raise with their body weight. If you're not used to it,
harder than it sounds, too.
Yeah. If you're not used to those, they will catch up quickly. And it's not unusual, even for relatively fit people, to reach fatigue pretty quickly when doing their entire weight on one leg at a time. Then it's very easy to add resistance to that movement by holding light dumbbells or anything to increase that load. And again, you're doing just one leg at a time. So you have your entire body weight, and you want to, stand on the ball of your foot. Imagine you're trying to raise your heel as far off the ground as possible, putting your weight into that big toe. And again, super simple. You can also work the front of the calf, the tibialis anterior, depending on equipment you have available. If you're at a local gym, you can use cables, you can use resistance bands. Again, some gyms have dedicated tools for this, but there's ways to work it. Even standing and raising your toes, just body weight, pulling your toes up towards your nose, if you're not used to doing that, can be, again, challenging to that muscle group.
There you go. Another thing that is probably important for runners is to train the hip flexors. So you could do this. We have what we call the Roman chair here, and you could just lift your leg. You're elevated off the ground with your arms kind of in an L position. Your feet are not touching the ground, and you just lift your knees up toward your chest. Or if that's too easy, you can keep your legs straight and lift them straight out, so your whole body's in an L position.
Yeah, you can add cables around your ankles. You can add resistance bands. You can wear ankle weights depending on how you're doing it. You can work one leg at a time using a loop band, where you push one foot away, loop around, and pull the other foot towards you, just laying on the ground. Again, there's lots of ways. Even traditional, most people think a lot of these movements are ab exercises, like raising those knees up, but that's not a direct ab exercise unless you're actually shortening the distance between your hips, your ribs, and your pelvis, right? If that distance is not changing,
that's the crunching.
If you're not changing that distance, then it's a hip flexor movement, and the abs are just working sort of statically. But that being said, old-fashioned sit-ups where you actually anchor your feet will often engage the hip flexors as well. And people will find like they get fatigue. Sometimes those movements hurt people's lower backs. They go, oh, when I do sit-ups, like old style where I put my toes under the couch, for instance, right? Or something like that. They go, oh, my low back hurts. Well, if your low back hurts, that means your low back needs to be strengthened. But it's the hip flexor it actually attaches to your lower spine and goes through your pelvis and attaches to the front of your femur. So the hip flexor is actually pulling you up by your lower back, and that's why that can be uncomfortable. For people who wanted to get rid of that, that's why they got into the habit of leaving the feet unanchored when doing abdominal work. But for athletes, there can be a benefit to anchoring the feet on purpose, recognizing that hip flexors will be engaged.
Flutter kicks, another very common exercise with runners.
Yeah, people think that's again an ab exercise, and again, it's statically the abs will fatigue, but it's not. But the abs are not connected to your legs, so they're not. Your legs don't move because your abs are doing something. So that's why these are not direct ab exercises, and this is a mistake that people make quite often. Yes, your abs will fatigue, so it's just sort of an ancillary benefit depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
There you go. Those are hit all the hot spots. If you do have access to a neck machine, definitely having a strong neck is going to just make you a stronger, more resilient person in general.
Yeah. Now, remember, running is a total body activity. You have to be able to use your upper body. Nobody runs fast without using their arms effectively. This is true for all styles of running. There's nobody, out there setting world records leaving their arms down by their sides. So you need
Although
to,
it's a funny image.
yeah, you do need to have
Just imagine a 100-meter sprint all out and somebody just got their arms right at their
arms
side.
tied behind your back.
Yeah.
That would be a different thing. But so training arms is beneficial. Remember that the big movements of pushing and pulling do already carry with them shoulders and biceps and triceps. But if you want to work specifically more isolated movements, hamstring curls, leg extensions, bicep curls, triceps, if you have access to those, which most mainstream gyms will have pieces that can work all these other parts, there's literally no downside to working those muscles as well. Having strong hamstrings and glutes is important for runners. Having strong biceps and triceps is also important for them. So, a well-rounded program would hit each of these things. It should only take about 8 to 12 total sets, following our model of working, 1 set per exercise. Yeah, you can get a whole total body program pretty easily in 8 to 12 total sets. And remember, you don't have to work everything every single time. So you could, if you feel like that you want to do more stuff, don't turn it into a 15, 20, 30 set workout. Instead, pick 8 or 10 exercises for Monday's workout and slightly different exercises for Thursday's workout, right? Maybe you did hamstrings and leg extensions and leg curls on Monday's workout, and then instead on Thursday's workout, you did the big leg press and the calf raise, and you're still getting your legs from different angles, different types of recruitment patterns. So yeah, and remember, if you're wondering how you can figure this stuff out, you can contact us here at TNT Strength, and we will help you build these programs. That's something that we do.
Reach out. We got your back and your calves, and we got all your muscles.
Yeah. So running, strength training, they do go together. We highly recommend, if you're a runner of any kind, you should be strength training to make that running better and to protect your body. Strength training, remember, is a forever activity for everyone. So get out there and find a way to do it.
Boom, baby. What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of
Truth Not Trends.
That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio 510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly bosun.
Game time?
Game time, baby. Game on. Game on. Car.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
Desmond could get into something called the donut runners.
I could. If I just run 1K, do I still get a donut?
Yeah.